My name is Alara Moreau, 28 years old from Hartford, Connecticut. I thought my father died a disgraced man, until a letter with no name and a photo from my childhood showed up at my door, revealing that the person who destroyed my family was the best friend I trusted most. Before we dive into this chilling tale of betrayal and buried secrets, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon, because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning who you can really trust. I came home late that night, tired from yet another shift spent cleaning up the mess of lawyers wealthier than they were competent. Life in Hartford had a rhythm, gray, fast, forgettable. I'd gotten used to keeping my head down, avoiding questions, especially about my last name, Moreau. Once, that name carried weight. Now, it opened old wounds and courtroom whispers. I noticed the envelope immediately, slipped beneath my apartment door. No return address. Cream-colored. Thick. The kind of paper no one used unless they wanted to be remembered. I almost tossed it. Junk mail with delusions of grandeur. Then I saw my name, written in blocky, uneven handwriting, Alara Moreau. And underneath it, in smaller, slanted script, "He's lying to you. Ask her." I froze. Inside was a photo. Faded. Glossy. Familiar, me and Maris Calderon. Age 7, maybe 8. Sitting on the swings at Bushnell Park. Our legs tangled. Our faces smeared with cotton candy. Behind us, blurred in the background, was a figure, too shadowed to make out. But I recognized the angle. My mother had taken this photo. The day before the indictment. The day before everything fell apart, my fingers trembled. Tucked behind the photo was a short, torn note. She knew. She always knew. A name I hadn't heard in 12 years. Elias Calderon. Maris's older brother. The quiet one with a crooked smile and ink-stained fingers. He used to sneak us books from his secret stash when we were kids, reading passages out loud like he was casting spells. He disappeared the same week my father was arrested for embezzlement. They said he ran. Some said he joined a cult. Others said he died, but now he was writing to me. The hallway seemed to close in around me. My chest tightened. No one talked about the case anymore. No one but the whispering ghosts of old newspapers and the pitying looks I still got in courtrooms when people realized who I was. My father, Theo Moreau, once one of the city's most respected attorneys, had died in prison. A broken man. Shamed. Alone. I always believed he was innocent. But I never had proof. And the one person who might have helped, Maris, vanished from my life as soon as the handcuffs snapped shut on my father's wrists. We'd grown up like sisters. Shared secrets, clothes, even birthdays, but she never came to the trial, never called, never explained. Now, this letter, this photograph, wasn't just a ghost. It was a match tossed into the dry hay of a past I'd tried to bury. I stared at the swing set in the photo again. Maris had always smiled like she knew something no one else did. For the first time in 12 years, I wondered if my best friend had been smiling at me. Or through me. And what, exactly, she had always known. The old Calderon house on Evergreen Lane hadn't changed much. The paint was fresher, the porch no longer sagged, and a sleek black Mercedes sat in the circular drive. But it still had that air of quiet menace, like it was holding its breath. I stood at the gate longer than I should have, fingers clenched around the photo in my coat pocket. My breath came out in cold bursts. The last time I'd stood here, I was 15 and crying. Begging Maris to pick up the phone. That night, the lights in her room stayed off. Now, a warm glow spilled through the windows. The house was alive again. So was the past. I rang the bell before I could talk myself out of it. It opened faster than I expected. Alara? Maris blinked, half shielding her face from the porch light. Her voice still had that velvet soft polish to it, the kind that made people lean in. She looked almost exactly the same, sleek black hair twisted into a knot, gold hoop earrings, a high-necked cream sweater. Elegant, controlled, expensive. Everything I wasn't. I need to talk to you, I said. She hesitated for just a moment, then stepped aside. Of course. Come in. The house smelled like cinnamon and floor polish. The walls had been repainted, but the same family portraits hung in the hallway. Her father's eyes still watched from the frame like a judge no one asked for. She led me to the sunroom, where a tray with untouched tea and almond cookies sat between two chairs. Want some? It's chamomile, she offered, already pouring. I'm not here for tea, Maris. She smiled tightly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I figured. I pulled the photo from my pocket and slid it across the table. Her fingers froze on the teacup. I got this yesterday. Along with a note. From Elias. Silence. Her eyes stayed on the image for a heartbeat too long before she looked up. Elara. Elias has been gone for over a decade. You know that. You're not even going to pretend to be surprised? I'm just trying to understand why you'd believe a dead man, she said softly. You don't know what he was dealing with. He was unstable. That was the word their family always used when someone stepped out of line, unstable. Someone forged his signature on firm documents after he disappeared, I said. And you were the only one close enough to do it. Maris's expression didn't change, but I saw it, the quick pulse in her throat. The tiniest flinch. You don't know what you're talking about. Then help me understand. Who's lying? Elias? My father? Or you? Her voice sharpened. Your father did what he did. And he paid the price. Bringing this back now won't give you peace. It'll just reopen wounds you clearly haven't healed from. I stood, pulse racing. I'm not looking for peace. I'm looking for truth. And I saw it in her eyes then, just for a second, fear. My hands were black with dust by the time I reached the back wall of the storage unit. It smelled like mildew and old paper, a tomb of my father's ruined legacy. He'd kept it for years, even after his sentencing. I remembered how he used to say, the truth always leaves a trail, Elara. You just have to know where to dig. Now I was digging, literally. Beneath a stack of cracked law books and outdated court files, I found a locked metal case. The kind lawyers use for confidential archives. It took me nearly 15 minutes to pick the old lock with a screwdriver and a nail file. My breath caught as it popped open. Inside were 3 leather-bound ledgers and a manila folder labeled, Discrepancies, Q1 Q2, 2012. I flipped through the pages, the tension in my chest building with every line of financial jargon. Most of it meant nothing to me. But then, there it was, line after line of coded transactions. Withdrawals. Transfers. Phantom vendors. And beside each transaction were 2 sets of initials, MC, EC. I froze. Maris Calderon, Elias Calderon, but that couldn't be right. Elias had vanished in 2010. These entries were dated 2012. I flipped faster, heart pounding. His initials appeared in multiple places, signing off on audit reports, internal memos, even fake approval letters. This wasn't a record. It was a script. A carefully constructed performance, a lie. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of every page, my hands shaking. Whoever had done this had forged Elias's signature to cover their tracks, making it seem like he'd helped orchestrate the financial collapse that destroyed my father. But now I had proof that he hadn't, and if Elias hadn't been involved, then everything that followed, my father's indictment, his fall from grace, his death, had been built on a lie. I sat on the cold concrete floor, the reality hitting me like a freight train. They didn't just frame my father, they buried him, and they used a missing brother as the shovel. I stared at the ledger, bile rising in my throat. I knew Maris was involved. But I didn't know why. Or how far she'd gone. There was only one other person who could explain all this, the person who had supposedly disappeared without a trace, Elias, if he was still alive, and I believed now, more than ever, that he had the key to the truth, and I was done waiting for it to find me. I packed the ledgers, locked the unit, and stepped back into the bitter Hartford air. I wasn't just chasing ghosts anymore. I was hunting the living. The Calderon Moreau building stood like a mausoleum on Asylum Avenue, 4 stories of weathered stone and shuttered windows. It used to be the heart of Hartford's legal elite. My father called it his proudest achievement. now, it was gutted. Forgotten. A gravestone for a legacy that had been stolen, but as I stared at the small brass plaque freshly screwed into the front door frame, a sick twist formed in my stomach. Calderon Ventures Group, private offices. No public entry. Maris, she hadn't just survived the collapse of our families. She had thrived. While my father died with a number stamped on his chest, she'd taken our name, our ashes, and turned it into her brand. I circled the building, found the back entrance chained shut. Through a crack in the boarded-up windows, I could still see the grand marble foyer. I remembered playing there after school, tracing the veins in the stone like secret maps. My dad used to kneel beside me and say, "This place was built to last longer than we will." I guess it had. Just not in the way he meant. Back home, I pulled up Calderon Ventures Group in the business registry. It was clean, too clean. A private holdings firm specializing in infrastructure and legal tech. But when I searched its filings deeper, I found something that made me sit up straight. The firm's seed funding had come from an anonymous trust, Davenport Evergreen LLC, established in early 2013. Just a year after the collapse of Calderon Moreau, a little more digging revealed that Davenport Evergreen's registered mailing address was the same as Maris's private post office box in West Hartford. I wasn't a lawyer like my father. But I knew a paper trail when I saw one. She hadn't just walked away from the wreckage of the firm. She'd salvaged it. She repackaged the bones, stripped the scandal from the walls, and started fresh with a sanitized version of the truth. One where her family were victims of betrayal, not architects of it. Maris hadn't just taken the firm. She'd taken everything. I opened the files from my father's ledgers again and laid them side by side with the founding documents of Calderon Ventures. The dates lined up with surgical precision. Her timing wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. She let my father take the fall, waited until the media forgot his name, and then re-emerged as the Phoenix. A Calderon, reborn, but I had something she didn't plan for. I had Elias's forged signature, I had the original ledgers, and I had motive. She buried the truth under polished branding and boardroom smiles, but I was going to dig it up, one lie at a time. Bushnell Park hadn't changed much. The same iron benches lined the winding paths. The carousel still sang its haunting melody in the distance, and the fountain gurgled steadily beneath the weight of time. It was the first place I ever met Maris. We were 6, fighting over a melted cherry popsicle and ended up sharing it. We spent summers here, inventing kingdoms, swearing loyalty in invisible crowns. Now, I waited under the oak tree near the swings, our old castle, holding a manila envelope filled with copies of forged ledgers and Elias's initials. When Maris arrived, she was dressed like she always was, neutral tones, clean lines, not a wrinkle out of place. But I saw it, the faint twitch in her jaw. The weariness in her eyes. "You said this was urgent," she said flatly. "I have a flight tonight." I handed her the envelope. She didn't open it. "It's all copies," I said. "But the originals are safe. And if anything happens to me, they'll go straight to the press." She stared at me, face unreadable. "What do you want, Elara? An apology? That won't bring your father back." "I want the truth," I said. "Did you forge Elias's signature?" She laughed quietly. Not amused, resigned. "You think I had a choice?" That stunned me. "My father was already bleeding the firm dry," she said, stepping closer. "He had offshore accounts. Burn phones. He kept 2 sets of books. I didn't find out until it was too late. And when I confronted him, he told me flat out, 'If I go down, so does your brother, so you framed mine instead,'" I said. She shook her head slowly. "I didn't frame anyone. I just let the story unfold." Elias disappeared. That gave him the perfect shadow. "Your dad?" "He was stubborn. Wouldn't take the deal. He fought back, and lost." "You knew he was innocent." Her eyes flared. "Innocent?" "He knew what was happening. He may not have touched the money, but he stayed silent for too long." "You knew the truth, and you watched him rot," I said, voice breaking. "You watched me lose everything. I had nothing, she snapped. My father controlled everything. You think I was playing chess while he was king? I was surviving. I did what I had to do to keep something, anything, alive. I looked at her, truly looked, and saw someone who didn't regret the lie, just the consequences of being caught in it. So that's what you are now. A survivor? I asked, her mouth tightened. That's all I've ever been. We stood in silence, the ghosts of our childhood swirling around us like cold wind. Then she said, "Be careful, Alara. Survivors don't always play fair." She walked away, heels clicking like a gavel on stone, and I stood under our old tree, finally understanding. Maris never picked sides between right and wrong. She chose the one most likely to win. The second letter arrived 2 days after my confrontation with Maris, same thick envelope. Same slanted handwriting. This one was shorter, north of Unionville. Route 4, mile marker 12. Dirt path on the left. Come alone. There was no threat. No explanation. Just coordinates scrawled on the back of a crumpled photo, the same one from our childhood, only this time with a red circle drawn around the shadowy figure in the background. Elias. I drove up just before dusk, the Connecticut woods thick and silent around me. The dirt road looked abandoned, swallowed by pine and fog. My headlights barely cut through the gloom, then I saw it. A small cabin tucked behind a thicket of birch trees. Its roof sagged, and smoke curled from the chimney like the last breath of a secret. I stepped out of the car, heart thudding like footsteps behind me. The door creaked open before I could knock. Elias stood in the doorway, older, gaunter. His once cool hair now peppered with gray. He looked like someone who hadn't slept a full night in years. But it was him. The same eyes. Same voice, soft as dusk. "I was wondering if you'd come," he said. I couldn't speak. I just walked in. The cabin was bare, wood stove, mattress, piles of old newspapers, and a desk littered with envelopes, legal pads, and court records. "Why did you disappear?" I finally asked. He looked away. "Because Maris gave me a choice, vanish or watch our father destroy everything, including you." My breath caught. Me? She knew your father wouldn't play along. He'd go down swinging. And she knew you'd never stop defending him. That made you a problem. I shook my head. She said she did it to survive. That your father was blackmailing her. Elias laughed bitterly. Our father didn't blackmail her. She blackmailed him. She found out what he was doing, offshore accounts, falsified audits, and she turned it into leverage. He thought he was still in control, but Maris had already started forging documents. Including mine. You didn't sign those ledgers. No, he said. I signed nothing. I left Hartford with nothing but a backpack and a warning. If I ever showed my face again, she'd take you down too. She said, "One trial is enough for the headlines, don't you think?" I stood there, hands trembling, blood pounding in my ears. She framed my father. Ruined him. She built her entire empire on your father's grave and my silence, Elias said. And now, she's scared you're going to dig it all up. He reached into a drawer and handed me a flash drive. It's all there, every forged file, every signature, every transfer. The original she thought she destroyed. I stared at the tiny drive in my hand. She never expected you to come back, Elias said. But she definitely didn't expect you to bring me with you. I didn't sleep the night I got back from the cabin. I sat at my kitchen table, the flash drive from Elias clutched in one hand, a mug of cold tea in the other, and a dozen questions clawing at my brain. But one thing was clear, I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. By morning, I had emailed the files, every forged ledger, every falsified approval, every signature Maris thought she buried, to the Hartford Chronicle, along with a personal statement and a name, Elias Calderon. Within 48 hours, the headline was everywhere: DeRosier scandal reignites. New evidence suggests famed law firm collapse was orchestrated from within. Byline, Rebecca Kyra, investigative reporter. It didn't take long for the story to explode. Local stations ran it with dramatic voiceovers and archival courtroom footage of my father in handcuffs. National outlets picked it up within days, framing it as a tale of greed, betrayal, and corporate cover-up. But the true tremor hit when I walked into the state attorney's office, unannounced, and handed over two things. 1. A notarized statement from Elias Calderon detailing his disappearance and Maris's threats. 2. The original documents I'd pulled from my father's storage unit, the ledgers bearing falsified signatures, tied directly to Calderon Ventures. The investigators didn't even pretend to play it cool. "This could change everything," one of them muttered. Flipping through the pages, I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. But maybe they were the same thing now. Maris stayed silent for 2 days. No statements. No tweets. No interviews. Just radio silence while the headlines piled up. Then came the press conference. She stood in front of a podium in an ivory coat, calm as ice, flanked by her attorneys. "These claims are baseless," she said smoothly. The words of a disgraced runaway and a grieving daughter with a grudge. I almost laughed at the irony. Grief didn't make me dangerous. Truth did, but behind the poise, I saw the cracks. That same night, the Chronicle released Elias's video testimony. He looked directly into the camera, voice steady, as he told the world everything. From his father's laundering to Maris's threats. By the next morning, #JusticeForMoreau was trending. People who once whispered behind my back were now flooding my inbox with apologies, support, and, unexpectedly, leads. Former employees of Calderon Ventures came forward. One anonymous whistleblower sent me internal emails that showed Maris had known about the false filings long before the collapse. The pressure was mounting. The court filed a motion to reopen my father's case, and for the first time in over a decade, I felt the weight on my chest begin to shift. Maris had built her empire on silence, but the truth had found its voice, and now, it was screaming. They arrested her at dawn. Maris Calderon, former CEO, socialite darling, and queen of polished control, was let out of her West End townhouse in silver cuffs and a tailored trench coat. Cameras flashed as if Hartford had been waiting years for this moment. She didn't resist. Didn't cry. Didn't speak. She just held her chin high, like she was walking a runway instead of into the hands of the justice system. The charges hit the news within the hour: conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, forgery, wire fraud, perjury. Each headline felt like a stone laid at my father's grave. Heavy. Necessary. I watched the press conference alone from my couch, Elias on speakerphone from his safe location upstate. "They finally did it," he said. "She's not untouchable anymore." "No," I whispered. "She never was." But even as the world turned against her, I knew better than to think Maris was done. 3 days after her arrest, I received a letter. It was postmarked from the county jail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My stomach clenched as I tore it open. "Alara, congratulations, you finally got your story. And the public got their villain. I'm sure your father would be proud, but pride has always been a dangerous thing, hasn't it? It blinds us. Makes us believe we're on the side of truth, when really, we're just choosing the side that loves us more. I don't expect you to understand why I did what I did. You were always too honest. Too righteous. But I didn't have the luxury of being soft. I survived because I played the game better than everyone else, including you, and for the record, I did love you. Like a sister. Maybe more than that. But even sisters lie when the stakes are high enough. Be careful with Elias. He's not as noble as he wants you to believe. You think he gave you everything out of guilt? No. He gave it to you because he knew if he kept it, someone would kill him for it. Enjoy your victory. Enjoy being the heroine. But remember this: every story has another side. And every empire, even yours, can burn warmly. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Maris was many things: a liar, a manipulator, a thief, but she was also a survivor to the bone, and even from behind bars, she still knew how to plant seeds of doubt. I folded the letter, placed it in a folder marked keep. Because I wasn't done yet. Not with her. Not with the truth. this wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclamation, for my father. For Elias. For me. And if Maris thought I'd burn quietly, she'd forgotten exactly who I'd learned to fight from. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the decision. Theo Moreau is hereby cleared of all charges posthumously. The conviction is vacated in light of new and substantial evidence proving a coordinated conspiracy and cover-up. I didn't cry. Not then, I just closed my eyes and listened to the sound of my father's name being lifted out of the mud. It had taken 13 years, 2 trials, a forest cabin, and a ruined empire to get here. But in the end, the truth stood taller than the lies. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward. Cameras clicked. Ms. Moreau, do you feel vindicated? What would your father say if he were here today? Will you be pressing charges against Elias Calderon as well? I stopped walking at that one. No, I said firmly. He's already served his sentence. Just not the kind you put in court records. Elias stood beside me, his face half shielded beneath a gray cap and sunglasses. He didn't speak. He hadn't spoken to the press at all. He didn't want attention. He wanted peace, but between us, there was something broken we couldn't quite repair. He'd hidden. He'd let me grieve a lie. He'd watched from the shadows while I spiraled through years of shame, and still, I couldn't bring myself to hate him. Sometimes survival leaves bruises no one sees. And sometimes the ones we love most become collateral damage in someone else's war. Weeks passed. Maris's trial date was set. More charges were filed as whistleblowers kept coming forward. Calderon Ventures dissolved under federal scrutiny, but the more the dust settled, the more I realized something. Vindication didn't taste like I thought it would. There was no parade. No peace, just silence, and an echo of what could have been. I stood at my father's grave with the court's declaration in my hand. I laid it down beside the stone, next to the faded photograph of the two of us outside the old firm. They cleared your name, I whispered. You were right. You always were. The wind rustled the trees above, and I imagined he could hear me. That may be somewhere. The weight on his chest had lifted too. I moved out of my apartment a month later. Changed my number. Closed the storage unit, but I kept the letters. The ledgers. The flash drive. The evidence of a story no one should ever forget, because the truth, I'd learned, doesn't always make you whole. Sometimes, it simply sets you free, and freedom, it comes with a cost. I walked away from Hartford that summer not as a victim. Not even as a hero, just as someone who survived, alone. But honest, and that would have to be enough. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another jaw-dropping tale of betrayal, justice, and redemption. What would you have done if you were in Alara's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes, the truth doesn't just set you free, it changes everything.